Hey, you guys. Happy Wednesday. Okay, so I wanted to hop on here because it's Wednesday. So if you guys don't know, for those of you who are just joining on Facebook, on Instagram, on both, later watching the replay, every Wednesday in my Facebook group, I do a live free training. So typically I'll ask for topics. Sometimes I'll do polls on different things to talk about. It's really to give you that weekly support on some sort of topic. So give you an insight into some of my coaching, some of my kind of consulting work with your business, questions you have, things that you're going through. It's just to be able to support you better. So if you are new here, I'm really excited for you guys to join us for maybe the first time, maybe it's the first time you're watching, but I'm really excited. So today I want to talk about how to make the right decision every time. And this was, it was really the question based on like, how do you make a decision based off of, hey, Amber, thanks for hopping on. Like, how do you know how to make the right decision based off either like intuition or logic? Like, how do you know you're going to trust yourself to do it? How do you know if it's the right thing for you to do? Like, how do you make that choice, right? And while I can't tell you to make the right choice, like yes or no in specific situations, it's totally up to you. However, this training is really going to kind of teach you how to do that. So I'm going to give you some examples on some big decisions that I have made that I've really sunk into this. And I'm going to give you some strategies on just things to know when you're going into a decision like this. So this is such a great topic. I feel like, all of us in general, but definitely as business owners, you make, especially if you're a solo entrepreneur, you have to make decisions that are going to affect you personally and you professionally with your business, and for your business, right? It's not just like you're going to a day job and you have to make business decisions for your job, for your business that probably don't affect you personally, right? Like you go home and you can kind of forget about it for most jobs, right? But when you're in business for yourself, that's a whole different level because you do have to kind of weigh both sides, right? Because they're going to affect you both personally and professionally. It's just kind of how business works. Again, especially if you are a solo entrepreneur, if you're doing all of the things by yourself, even if you have a small team, it just kind of happens that way. So many good things. I'm so excited to dive in. Let me know what questions you guys have along the way. I would love to answer them. And of course, if you're watching the replay later, just let me know that you're here and watching. And if you have any questions later so that I can follow back up with you on this topic. So how to make the right decision every time. This is a very specific, I titled it very specifically because the right decision is going to depend on you, obviously. That is the biggest variable or the biggest fixed factor of that decision where everything else is variables, right? So everything else is going to change, the outcome's going to change, but the thing that's going to stay the same is you. And that's why I can't make the decision for you, but I can give you strategies on how to go about doing this for yourself. So I want to start with a story because I feel like this is going to put it into perspective a little bit, like what those decisions could be. Sometimes these are just daily decisions. Sometimes they're a lot bigger. Maybe it's making a life change. Maybe it's making a career jump. Maybe it's, really investing heavily for the first time. There's so many different things that it could be, right? So being new things that you haven't tried, you're not going to have a lot of trust behind yourself yet because you've never done those things, and that's totally normal. So that's probably why you are so overwhelmed and undecided and just kind of stuck in that place of I don't know what to do. I don't know what decision I should make. You're just kind of stuck and probably feeling a little bit anxious about having to make a decision at some point and not knowing what that is yet. So, hey, Patty, thank you for hopping on. So first of all, I wanted to share this story. So last year, there were many, many decisions I felt like I had to make. So at the beginning of the year, I just want to preface it by saying one of my biggest goals for the year was to leave my day job, was to really pursue both of my businesses and take them to the next level so that I could do what I loved full time and really just start creating the life that I truly desired for myself. In that version of success that I had, right? So that meant leaving my day job, being able to support myself financially, being able to grow both of my businesses to a place where I could do that, plus in a state that was still good for my business, and still have time for like my own self-care, but also to be able to like walk the dogs in the middle of the day, or go see my horse in the middle of the day, or just kind of do what my body needed from me instead of just sitting in a cubicle for 8 hours a day. I needed to like just be able to take care of me better. And part of that was like, being able to work from home, have a very flexible schedule, things like that. So that was how I defined success. That's what I wanted for myself. So, January through like March time, I had no idea how I was going to make that happen. No idea at all. Like, I knew I needed to grow my businesses in order to do that, but that's about all I knew at that point. And I hired my first coach to really help me step into that next level and get there. And even then, like, as I was working with her, like, there were different strategies, there were different things I was doing to grow my business. There was different things I was pushing myself to get out of my comfort zone and to that next level. But it really, like, at the end of the day, it wasn't one decision I needed to make in order to do that, right? Like, it was still kind of up in the air on how that was going to happen. Those were just my intentions to make that goal come to life. Like, that was my biggest goal. So I say that to kind of preface my story here. So come like June, July-ish time, I had, so it's kind of funny how it happened. So kind of funny story, but like very big decisions were involved, right? So I had actually a message come to me from one of my cousins, my like second cousin, who I rarely see, like once every decade maybe, and just kind of a random message like, hey, our national director is looking for a photographer. Like, can I send him your information? Like, would you like to talk to him? And I was like, yes, absolutely. That sounds great, right? New potential client. Yes. Okay. So I did. I talked to him. After I talked to them, basically the question that they had, it was they needed someone to shoot their national karaoke championships. I'm going to be completely honest about this conversation. Like, this is where my head was at. So they wanted someone to come and photograph their national karaoke championships in Las Vegas. However, it was unpaid. They had no budget. They had all of this like production and everything and all, I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but they were like, we have no budget. And I was like, okay, well, that's not really going to work. However, it is in Vegas. It is a different state. Like, it still could have potential. So I was like, okay, would you consider, paying for my travel and my accommodations? So plane ticket out there, some sort of stay there, plane ticket back home, right? So they like talked over and they're like, okay, we can do that. I was like, okay, that's more viable, right? So got off the phone. I was like, well, let me think about it. Let me consider all this and let me get back to you. And of course they needed an answer like that night because it was coming up. It was like within like 2 weeks, like a week and a half away. So it wasn't like I could just go away and consider this and like work things out. It was like, okay, they need an answer because this is happening in like a week and a half. So I was still in my day job, mind you. So I would have needed to get that time off. It was a 3-day event. So I would have needed, I think it was like 3 or 4 days that I would have needed off work. And I had to talk to my manager, my boss, to do that in order to leave. It was very, very short time notice, right? Because it was coming up so soon. It wasn't paid. It was going to be 3 days for very, very long days. The championships were all day. So it was like, anywhere from like 10 to 12 hour days for 3 days. They wanted all the photos pretty quickly. They did want to have the option so that those participants could, if you hear the dogs in the background, they are playing, so that the participants could have an option to purchase photos, which I thought was good. Like, maybe that could bring in some income. But it was a couple of weeks before I had decided like I wasn't going to do any more free shoots. Because that's where I was at with my business. I was trying to grow. I was, trying to build my business further. That was one of the things I was like, I'm not doing free shoots anymore. However, this came up and I was like, okay, what do I do? Do I take it? Do I not? I had no idea, because part of me was like, I'm not doing it if it's not paid. That's ridiculous. This is silly. like maybe I shouldn't do it, plus I have to get the time off work. It's not very far away. Like that's not much notice for my job. What about the dogs? What about my family? Like blah, blah, blah. On the other side, it was like, but it is Vegas. It is a different state that I would be able to shoot in. It could be some good exposure. Who knows who I would meet down there. And I could potentially make a little bit of money off of like print sales, right? So those were the things I was like weighing, and I had no idea what to do. And I was very much in that stuck, right? Gross. Very much in that stuck place. Hey, come here. Come here. Apparently it's playtime. But I was very much torn in between both of those things. And here's why I share this, because that was a very big decision. It may not seem like it, but like to me and like being in the moment and at the time, like it felt very big, right? Because that was, I was weighing all of these sorts of things with my goal of leaving my day job and things like that. So basically I sat down and I realized, so I've shared this a couple times, but if you haven't heard me say this in other videos, one of the biggest pieces of advice that I have taken on from other people, I should look this up because I don't even know where this initially came from. But it was the advice of, if it's not a hell no, then it's a yes. No, sorry, other way around. I was like, wait a minute. If it's not a hell yes, then it's a no. I apologize for that. If it's not a hell yes, then it's a no. And part of me was thinking that. It was like, I'm not full, like, I kind of want to do this, but I'm not fully sold on it. So I was like, well, maybe it should be a no. However, I was still like, part of me was still really considering it. So I share that because one of the first pieces of advice I have for you when you are making any type of decision is like, first of all, how you feel about it. So I want to ask you, if you know your personality type, Myers-Briggs specifically, you are either like sensory feelings, like you have to like see it, hear it, smell it, taste it, feel it, like whatever that is, in order for it to be true or in order for you to believe in it, versus having intuition and really pulling that from yourself and being like, it's a gut feeling, like I just have this feeling, it's either a yes or a no type thing. So I want to preface that because you might be one of those two sides. I am very much based off my own tuition. So I kind of like go off my gut or like do what I'm feeling versus needing like true proof physically to know if it's right or wrong, right? So kind of more on that like logical standpoint. So of course, like viewing that decision from like the facts, from the logical standpoints of it, like, okay, pros and cons, like here's what I could get out of it, right? My flight, my accommodation, I could go to Vegas and like shoot these championships. I could potentially get money from print sales, right? Like the facts to weigh. However, at some point, like you are going to have to figure out if it's the right decision for you. And that's where my like intuition comes in. So I want you guys to, even if you don't fully trust yourself yet on your intuition, because intuition is a huge part, it's a huge practice, right? You have to do it over and over to kind of, and this is like any belief, you have to see that be true over and over again before you're really going to create a belief out of it. So before you kind of believe in your intuition, you really have to like use your intuition and then have it like see through it and have that be a good turnout in order for you to believe it like multiple times, right? Just like any belief that you create for yourself. And that could go for bad things too. So if you've used your intuition before and it's ended up like bad, so to say, you may not be trusting your intuition because you've created that belief that using your intuition leads to bad results, right? It's the way that, however it proves to you, that you start creating those beliefs. That doesn't mean it's necessarily true. That's just how the belief has been created in your head. So I want to say that because that's where a lot of people are like, no, like I've used my intuition before and it hasn't turned out the way I wanted it to, so I'm not going to do that. It's just a belief. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It's just a belief that you've created for yourself. So knowing how you feel about it is very important to me because of that. And at the end of the day, like if you think forward, like what are you afraid of in that? That's what I want to ask you. So in a decision, what are you afraid about that decision? Obviously, usually it's making the wrong decision. But what does that mean? Like if you were to, so in my situation, if I were to go to Vegas, like what am I afraid of? If I decided to say no and just, go about my business, what am I afraid of there? Or what shows up? What could possibly happen? So if you, instead of staying stuck in the present and not knowing and kind of worrying about the future, I want you guys to I use this strategy with a lot of my clients too. This is, can be an NLP technique. If you guys have heard of NLP before, it's neuro linguistic programming. Kind of hard to say, but at least for me. But that is one of the exercises that I really take my clients through and that I do for myself sometimes too, because we get so caught up in the present and thinking about the future, or being in the present and thinking about how past decisions or situations have resulted in and things like that, that we get too stuck in moving forward because we're either too worried about the future or the past. And taking yourself out of the present moment and being like, okay, like put yourself in that situation, like visualize yourself, think about that situation. Like how could it potentially go? Obviously you're not going to know for sure, but if you can get yourself in that headspace of like, visualizing it, like what could that look like if you decided to go? Like what are some of the bad things? What are some of the good things that could come out of it? What are you afraid of in that situation? Like what are some fears that come up for you in that? Some of mine, like trying to think back to it, one was like kind of like traveling alone to a place I didn't really know people, especially Vegas. However, I did know that my second cousin was going to be there, so that was kind of cool. So right, good and bad. It was definitely a next step for my business. At that point, I hadn't shot a photography shoot out of state, which I know I was definitely afraid of, but I knew it was definitely good exposure to start networking with new people. And the other one was like, I was afraid of like the long days and the time commitment and spending my time away from work and my family for a non-paid shoot. That was definitely not so much a fear, but just kind of like a potential downfall. However, like it could, I could meet other people. I could have potential print sales. I could have, right? So you have to like put yourself in that situation a little bit to see those fears, to see the things that could potentially happen, to get yourself into that position so that you can see it a little bit clearer than just worrying about the future or the past experiences that you have had. If I could talk today, it would be great. And same for, if you decide to say no to it, like, what does that mean? Like, okay, you go about, like, I would have been sitting back in my day job, like, working on the same things. I would have come home and done the same things, right? Like I would just go about my business. And would I, in that moment, like knowing that that was still happening, regardless of if I was there or not, how would I feel about that? And that's where I decided, because I didn't want to wonder what that would have been like had I said yes. And to me, that was very much the weighing factor on like, maybe I should do this. And that potential, like knowing my goal, and I tell you that goal because this is where it comes in. Knowing my goal and the direction I wanted to go, I like point back here because my goal is like in the back of my head apparently. But knowing that I wanted to leave my day job to pursue my businesses and grow those to the next level, specifically in this situation, my photography business, why would I not take this new opportunity if that is my goal, if that's in the direction, like aligned with my goal, then just sit in my day job for another day and give up that opportunity to do something new with my photography business? And I was like, okay, that's where I need to decide. Because if it aligns with my goal and there are potential good things and they do, kind of outweigh some of those negative things, why should I not do it? Right? And when it comes back to my intuition, I just remember having that feeling like, it sucks that it's not a paid shoot. It sucks that this is so quick and, my boss could potentially say no or, things like that. But behind all of that, behind everything else, I was like, I kind of want to do it. Like there was this voice in my head being like, but I kind of want to do this, like there's this and this and this, but I kind of want to do it. Right. So knowing that I had still that drive, like even though there were negative things, even though I definitely had some fear around it, I was like, but I still kind of want to do it. So that's why I made that decision. And I decided to say yes. I tell you that story because even so let me just continue the story because this is going to make more sense, because you're like, okay, but how do I know if it's the right one, right? So at that point, no, I didn't know if it was the right choice, right? But I decided, yes, I was going to do this. So a week and a half later, I fly to Vegas. I take the days off work. I'm not making an income from my day job. I'm not making, money at the shoot. So I'm like, God, I hope this is worth it. Hop on the plane, get to Vegas. A couple things go downhill. So the accommodations, like I ended up sharing a room with someone, and I was supposed to get like the actual room. I ended up sleeping like on the couch pull-out, which I was not really happy with. I mean, first world problems, right? But it was still like, okay, like that kind of rubs me the wrong way, but whatever, it's okay. These 12 plus hour days were so draining. Gross. So draining. It was a lot of fun initially. Like I was shooting like performance photography. Like I love kind of like a concert feel, right? Because it was singers, vocalists singing their songs for this karaoke championships. And it was like they had 3 different days to get those points, and then they had like a semifinals and then a finals round. So it was all day, 3 days. So I got there, I think the first day was like 10, and I was there almost until like 11 o'clock at night, and then got up and basically did it again the next day. And then the finals day, I think it started at like noon that day. I think it did start a little bit later. However, it went later. And that night I was flying out to come back home. So, and I think my flight was at like midnight or like 1 a.m. or something like that. It was like a red-eye flight. So I was exhausted. Like by the 3rd day, I was so grumpy. Like I didn't, of course, like when I got there, like I tried to not let it show. I was like, I am here to shoot. That's what I'm doing. Don't try to talk to me otherwise. Like I was so drained. It was so just hard on my body because it's just like a lot of moving around, and you're on your feet for 12 hours a day and shooting and uploading the photos quickly and getting them on my hard drive and uploaded and edited quickly and uploaded to the gallery and then like back out to shoot because I was the only photographer there. So it's not like I could take a break. I had to get like every single person, right? So that they had photos. It was so draining. And there were so many times where I was like, okay, I really think I made the wrong decision. Like I'm never doing this again. I don't know, like this wasn't worth it. Like there were so many negative things coming in my head where I was really second guessing myself. And I'm sure that this has happened to you a lot, because this is why I want to share this. Because it's not about just how you see the results in that moment, right? And that's it. It's everything that led from you saying yes to that. So don't think of like, just because I felt totally drained while I was there, that was the end result of my decision of saying yes. And that I came to the conclusion that was the wrong decision. I'm never doing that again. No, as drained and exhausted and tired as I was, and even though I was in a very negative mindset, trying to pull myself out of it, but I was just so exhausted. So after getting home and like finishing that and just trying to get back into the swing of things, that's when things kind of started to happen from that. That's when I had met the world producer there, but he had kind of like, I forget how we started talking, but I think he reached out to me because he liked one of the photos and he wanted to make it his profile photo. So I was like, okay, yeah, absolutely. So I like sent it to him, and then we started talking about the pictures, and he really liked them, and how like he does music on his own, and how he'd love for me to take pictures like of for his next album and things like that. But he was in Finland. And then I just remember sitting in my cubicle and thinking, I really wish that I could shoot the World Karaoke Championships because they were going to be in Finland. And I was like, man, I really hope he asks me. I wish that he would ask me to do that. That would be so cool. And then I was like, wait a minute, just ask him. Like, damn it, just ask him. What the worst he can say is no, like then you'll just keep working, like whatever, right? So just ask. So like after a couple conversations and things like that, and that came up, I was like, hey, like, just want to throw it out there. Like, I'm interested. And guess what? Like, long story short, it happened. So just because you make a decision and then you might immediately see it as like, oh my God, maybe I made the wrong decision. That doesn't necessarily mean that's how the outcome should end. Because a lot of the times that's how our brain works, right? It's like you say, yes, this happens, either that was right or wrong, and then it's done. But it's really not that simple. Regardless of the decision that you have to make, it's going to continue, right? It's going to either lead you to new opportunities. It's going to lead you down a different path of more decisions that you have to say yes or no to. Like, it's just a string of decisions at that point. So even though it might feel like a huge decision at the time, doesn't mean it's like an end all be all, right? And just because you may feel like it was the wrong decision at one point doesn't mean that it's going to continue to lead to other better opportunities and other things that could potentially make that yes a really good outcome in the end. So even though I was tired and exhausted, it was worth it because I got to shoot the World Karaoke Championships in Helsinki, Finland in December, which guess what? Oh my gosh, I get goosebumps talking about this. Guess what? Like, that decision to shoot the World Karaoke Championships in Finland is the decision that led me to leave my day job. So, oh my gosh, I have so many goosebumps right now because that's totally how it happened. And I'm totally going to get emotional because it was just sorry. It was just such a crazy decision because I had no idea I didn't know this was going to happen either. I'm sorry. It was just so cool because I had no idea at the beginning of the year how I was going to leave my day job. Like, it just wasn't possible in my mind, but I knew that that was my goal. And saying yes to that and going through that and talking to the world producer and seeing if, that was a possibility, and then saying yes to that. And, talking with Scott and being like, this could potentially happen. Like, do you want to go to Finland? And guess what? Like, that one was paid too. And I got to go over to Finland and I still met like incredible people over there and just like a crazy experience. And that was the decision. I was like, you know what? I don't even want to have the conversation with my work. Not that I would think that they'd think badly or like anything like that. I was just like, I just think I'm ready. Like, I think this is the time to do it. And like, if I can make this happen, like, what could I do if I spend all my time and energy, thank you for all the hearts, I so appreciate it. What if I spend all of my time and energy doing this instead of trying to, juggle a day job on top of that, right? Like, where could I lead to if I say yes to myself? And that was when I decided. So I actually put in a month's notice versus a 2 weeks because my job was great. People I worked with were great. I wanted to leave them off on a good foot. And I left December 5th, and December 15th, I went to Finland. And the rest is history, right? But I want you guys to know, like, that's why I preface that so heavily with like what my goal was. Because when you know your goals, this is a good segue, which is what the challenge is all about for next week. If you truly know your goals that you have for your life, for your business, what you want that version of success to look like, as long as you have those there, even if you have no idea how you're going to make them possible, some of that will work through, because I definitely believe that having an action plan and like knowing some of the steps that you have to take in order to get there and push yourself outside of your comfort zone is totally key. However, a lot of the times for those bigger goals that you've never done before, you're not going to have that how. And that's not going to show up until it like happens all of a sudden. So without the how, you do have to understand what your goals are so that you can make the decisions that align with those goals. And when you make decisions that align with your goals and you're able to say yes to those things, even if it scares the hell out of you, even if it exhausts you and drains you, it's potentially going to lead you to new opportunities that get you to that goal. And sharing that story, you can see how like that has worked for me. And that's been multiple times, but that's definitely one of the biggest ones that's ever happened. I had no idea how I was going to make that goal happen. And sure enough, with saying yes to myself and allowing those opportunities to happen and doing more and more and things like that, it just happens. It's just crazy how sometimes it just leads you to that happening. Amen. Yes. Can I get an amen? I love it. So sorry. Oh my gosh. Big story. I didn't know that was going to happen. Anyway, so I hope that makes sense. I hope that's really helpful for you guys. I know this got a little bit long. I guess it's only 30 minutes compared to like an hour sometimes. But that's my advice that I want to give you on making a decision and knowing that it's the right decision every time, because as long